Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 17 based on novel. So let's start. Countless practitioners on Divine Item Mountain Range could faintly see the craziness gathering in Lindong's eyes. All of their expressions were rather interesting. It was impossible for them to imagine just where the latter got the courage to fight back against three great Samsara stage experts. Such resistance was undoubtedly akin to striking a stone with an egg. He had courage, but this was too reckless. Ha ha, what an interesting fellow. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander softly chuckled. His eyes were filled with interest as he stared at Lindong. It was likely that this was the first time he had seen someone who dared to utter such words in front of three Samsara stage super experts with the strength of the initial profound death stage. What an unyielding individual. The Golden Ape Demon Commander also nodded. If it was not because the Divine Item Treasury was far too important, he might feel some admiration for Lindong's actions. He has always been this arrogant. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander frowned. His eyes were icy and filled with ridicule as he stared at Lindong, like a cat teasing a mouse. I can only say that you have terrible luck to end up in this situation. Deep Lightning Mountain did indeed possess some strength, and Blood Dragon Hall would have to pay a price in order to destroy it. Unfortunately, the other two great demon commanders had joined in. In this way, the destruction of Deep Lightning Mountain was basically set in stone. If the three great demon commanders truly wanted to join hands and eliminate something from the Beast War region, no other outcome was possible. Lindong's eyes were ice cold as he slowly stepped forward in the face of the shockingly powerful pressure from the three great demon commanders. After which, his black eyes looked towards the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander as his lips parted into a smile. Come on, Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Haven't you been itching to deal with me for quite some time? I will let you die without any resentment. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's expression was dark and solemn while murderous intent surged within his eyes. Lindong was right. He had been holding back for a long time. Little Flame, the puppet will stop one of the demon commanders. I'll leave the other one to you. Lindong turned his head and looked towards Little Flame. After which, he pointed at the sky-devouring corpse beside him. Okay, I will attack together with the tiger-devouring army. Little Flame nodded in a serious manner. He did not possess Lindong's many techniques, hence he needed to borrow the power of the tiger-devouring army in order to make up for the enormous gap. Lindong nodded. He pondered for a while before waving his hand. A black light shot out from his sleeve and flew towards Little Flame. What is this? Little Flame grabbed it and felt his arm suddenly sink. His eyes hardened as power circulated in his body, allowing him to stably hold it. He looked over and saw a giant black hammer in his hand. Extremely complex and obscure symbols covered the giant hammer while a heavy feeling spread from it. It was as though the surrounding air had become viscous. Little Flame's eyes were burning while the strength within his body was circulated to the limits. After which, the hammer was swung downwards and everyone was dumbstruck as an incomparably huge crack extended on the ground like a giant python at lightning speed. It directly split a distant mountain into two. Excellent weapon. Little Flame grinned. This divine hammer was incomparably heavy and just happened to suit his strong and tyrannical body. All warriors of Deep Lightning Mountain. You will all be rewarded if we are able to successfully return. Lindong looked at Chen Tong's group and said. Upon hearing these words, Chen Tong and the rest looked at the giant black hammer that was giving off frightening ripples in Little Flame's hands before they firmly nodded. Something like a divine object was too far-fetched for them. Given their capabilities, they would likely only be able to dream about owning one in their lifetimes. Yet, the current Lindong had the ability to fulfill his words. The pupils of the many surrounding experts shrunk upon seeing this and the greed in their eyes intensified. Everyone could tell that the giant black hammer in Little Flame's hand was definitely an ancient divine object that was ranked on the ancient divine object ranking. Looks like you have indeed gained quite a lot. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander Trio's eyes were burning with excitement as they stared at the giant black hammer in Little Flame's hand. They could detect a familiar fluctuation from the giant hammer that allowed them to recognize that this was the item they had ultimately failed to obtain earlier. Want it? Let's see if you have the ability to take it. Lindong sneered. His words were as sharp as blades. Since they had already fallen out with each other, there was no longer a need to act polite. Leave this brat to me. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander spoke in an eerie voice. His desire to murder Lindong had already reached the point where he could no longer restrain himself. In that case, leave that General Yang to me. The Golden Ape Demon Commander looked at Little Flame and spoke in a faint voice. I shall see just how strange this puppet is. The Ghost Condor Demon Commander looked at the sky-devouring corpse with a peculiar expression in his eyes. It was likely that this was the first time he had seen such a powerful puppet. The three great demon commanders did not use the battle power of their subordinates. Although they understood that this would save them a lot of trouble, they were after all the three strongest factions in the Beast War region. The three of them alone were already able to suppress practically any opponent, hence, there was no need to use their subordinates. Lindong stared at the mocking face of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. His body slowly rose into the air as the Yuan power within it was circulated to the limit. Rich green light spread around his body while a vague dragon sounded from within it. I will let you understand just how foolish it is to offend a Samsara stage expert. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander indifferently looked at Lindong. Soon after, he lifted his hand and waves of black-white energy rapidly gathered at his fingertips. Rich life and death power merged together, emitting an extremely terrifying ripple. This was the power that approached reincarnation, its mysteriousness connected heaven and earth. Roar! 100 green dragon-like tattoos suddenly whistled out from within Lindong's body. His expression was indifferent and he had no intentions of warming up. 100 dragon sword and a punch was thrown. He clearly understood that even with his current strength, he must use his full power when facing a Samsara stage expert. Bang! 100 green dragon-like tattoos gathered together. They flew through the sky like a green comet, causing the faces of many powerful individuals to turn somewhat grave. Even those perfect profound death stage experts did not dare to directly receive an attack of this level. Do you still believe that I am the demonic spiritual body from a month ago? Upon seeing this, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander sneered. Black-white energy gathered on his fingertips, turning into a palm-sized black-white scale. The scale was covered all over by densely packed saw teeth while an extremely sharp feeling seeped out from it. It was as though space itself could be severed. On account of how you have helped retrieve all the divine objects from the divine item treasury, I shall let you witness the power of a Samsara stage expert. Life and death scale. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander flicked his finger and that black-white scale shot forward. It was extremely quick. Cracks were formed in space as it shot past. Soon after, everyone saw the black-white light collide against the green comet. No overly loud sound was emitted. Everyone could only see the green light disintegrate while the tiny black-white light charged forward like a hot knife through butter, directly cutting through the green light formed by 100 green dragon-like tattoos. A Samsara stage expert was indeed frightening. Black-white light tore through the green light. Its momentum was not reduced as it mercilessly shot towards Lindong. Clang! However, a large scarlet-red cauldron appeared when the black-white light was about to hit Lindong. A metallic sound appeared and the large cauldron was immediately blown away. A deep dent had appeared on the hard cauldron surface. Lindong looked at the dent on the burning sky cauldron as his eyes hardened and graveness rose within his heart. Only after truly fighting against an expert of this level did he realize just how terrifyingly powerful they were. 8-level burning sky gate. The expression in Lindong's eyes changed rapidly. With an icy shout, 8 scarlet red light rays suddenly whizzed out from the burning sky cauldron, turning into 8 scarlet red doors in the sky. Energy spluttered out from them, transforming into a giant volcano, which descended towards the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Bang! Lightning flashed in Lindong's hand and the Lightning Emperor scepter appeared. 9 lightning dragons rushed out from it while thunder filled the sky. Lindong used all sorts of techniques right from the beginning in the face of such an opponent. His attacks were overwhelming, causing rich surprise to surface in the eyes of the countless experts around them. This was the first time they had seen an initial profound death stage expert that possessed such formidable battle power. Insignificant tricks. However, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander merely laughed in the face of these ferocious attacks. His body did not move. Only when the attacks were about to fall upon him did black-white light gather outside of his body and turn into circular black-white light barrier. Bang bang! A volcano and lightning dragons ruthlessly struck the black-white light barrier, but he remained as steady as a rock. Black-white light flowed like the fusion of life and death, and nothing could shake it. The energy ripples gradually faded. Everyone gazed at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, who was completely safe under the protection of the black-white light barrier, as they quietly shook their heads. The gap between the two was far too humongous. You are indeed very powerful. Lindong gently lowered his hands upon seeing this scene, while an emotional sigh flitted across his black eyes. The Samsara stage was indeed very powerful. However, compared to the helplessness he felt a year ago, the him of now was overflowing with battle intent. You should stop struggling if you have given up. It will be easier on you. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander smiled. His smile sent a chill straight into one's bone. Given up? Lindong raised his head and stared at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Subsequently, mockery appeared from the corners of his mouth. He had not given up when he was so weak back then in unique Devil City. Even less needed to be said about the current situation. Don't you wish to know what I obtained from the divine item treasury? Lindong laughed. He slowly lifted his hand as 5 different colored lights gathered within it. At the same time, an extremely frightening ripple emanated from the 5-color light. It seemed as though the Yuan power in the area had suddenly started to rebel at this very moment. Since you wish to know, I shall show you. A soft voice faded as the 5-color light condensed. Under the converging Yuan power, a palm-sized mini-ancient palace appeared in Lindong's palm. 5-color lights gathered together before a miniature 5-color ancient hall appeared on Lindong's palm. At the same time, an extremely powerful ripple was quietly being emitted, causing the Yuan power in the sky to become extremely violent. Is that? Countless pairs of eyes were focused on that object. After which, they were stunned when they saw that miniature ancient hall. A moment later, some sharp-eyed individuals managed to uncover some clues. Immediately, shocked exclamations sounded. Is that the ancient divine item treasury? Many pairs of eyes suddenly widened. They were stunned when they saw the ancient hall in Lindong's hands. None of them could understand why the originally huge ancient divine item treasury had turned into such a state and appeared in Lindong's palm. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was also a little startled when he saw this scene. He suddenly frowned a moment later. Following which, there was an indescribable desire surging from deep within his eyes. So, the divine item treasury is also an ancient divine item. If I guess correctly, the divine item treasury should be the mysterious divine palace, which is ranked 10th on the ancient divine object ranking, am I right? Only such an object possesses such a frightening collection of divine objects. You seem to be quite knowledgeable. Lindong smiled faintly. Since he had taken out the mysterious divine palace, it would definitely be recognized by others. After all, those who could reach the samsara stage had relatively frightening strength and experience. Moreover, they were also fairly knowledgeable of what happened during the ancient times. Brat, you are truly my lucky star. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander smacked his lips. Other than the top-ranked, seemingly illusory, divine object, all the remaining 9 divine objects in the top 10 of the ancient divine object ranking were created by the ultimate expert who had surpassed the world, the symbol ancestor. Although the other divine objects were powerful, they were ultimately a little lacking compared to these 9 great divine objects. In fact, even a peak-level reincarnation stage expert would be involuntarily attracted if any of these 9 great divine objects appeared. Hence, his heart was naturally filled with joy now that he was able to see one of them in person. It is a little too early to decide if I am your lucky star or your nightmare. Lindong smiled coldly. Yuan power surged from within his body and poured continuously into the mysterious divine palace in his palm. after which, the latter emitted 10,000 rays of light. The many light rays gushed out from the mysterious divine palace in a locust-like fashion. Clamor. The light rays were just like flowing rivers that floated in the air above Lindong. If one was to observe carefully, one would see countless number of flickering, glowing, sharp divine objects flowing in it. The entire river was actually formed by countless number of divine objects. The mysterious divine palace possessed a refining ability, and there were countless divine objects within. However, these divine objects were far from being able to enter the ancient divine object ranking. Nonetheless, with so many of them gathered together, it was still an extremely frightening sight. 10,000 treasure torrent flow. With an icy cold face, Lindong suddenly emitted a cold cry. Immediately, one could see a surging 5-color torrent. It tore through the distant sky and ruthlessly smashed towards the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander in an extremely frightening fashion. Life and Death Shield. When the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander saw the 5-color torrent, he narrowed his eyes before a life and death force rapidly surged out from within his body. Subsequently, it transformed into a huge energy light shield. Black and white colors slowly rotated over the shield, appearing like the fusion of life and death. The 5-color torrent ruthlessly smashed against the life and death shield. Those energy ripples that erupted forth caused many surrounding mountains to collapse. Some experts, who were unfortunately drawn into the fight, had pale faces as they vomited blood and hurriedly fled. The 5-color torrent was reflected. However, it suddenly charged forward once again, appearing like a huge dragon swinging its tail, as it ruthlessly smashed against the life and death shield again and again. A deep and heart-pounding noise was continuously emitted. In fact, the land itself had collapsed at this moment, and the space itself had also become greatly distorted. Everyone was shocked as they stared at the 5-color torrent launching a wild assault. Even a perfect profound death stage expert would wound up dead in the face of a continuous barrage of attacks from countless divine objects. In the face of the violent attacks from the 5-color torrent, it was possible to see some cracks appearing on the incomparably solid life and death shield. Soon after, an opening finally appeared on the light shield formed from the life and death force. Lindong's eyes were cold. He clenched his hand before the 5-color light once again swung down violently. After which, everyone could see the life and death shield suddenly breaking apart. The attack engulfed it and a figure flew backwards. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's feet rubbed the ground, leaving a 10,000 feet scar. Only then did he manage to gradually stabilize his body. His clothes were somewhat tattered and his expression was exceptionally gloomy. After all, he never expected that he would be pushed back by Lindong's attack. It is indeed worthy of being an ultimate divine object ranked 10th on the ancient divine object ranking. Allowing a brat like you to use it is simply a waste. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander suddenly smiled before he took a step forward. Black and white life and death force erupted from within his body like a volcano. Following which, both his hands swelled before they directly turned into two exceptionally ferocious huge blood dragon arms that were entangled with life and death force. Soon after, he clenched his dragon arms before he ruthlessly punched the 5-color torrent that was whistling over. Bang! A frightening loud sound spread and energy waves, that were visible to the naked eye, spread apart. However, this time around, the huge 5-color light torrent was pushed back. Lindong's expression was icy cold. A thought passed through his mind, and the light, which was formed by countless number of divine objects, once again whistled forward and ruthlessly smashed against his opponent. Boom boom. The light whistled forward while the dragon fist danced. Violent energy came sweeping forth like a storm. The many surrounding mountains were all reduced into dust from the shockwaves that were being emitted. Countless powerful individuals on the Divine Item mountain range wore frightened expressions as they hurriedly pulled back. Then, they stared at that young figure, who was actually bold enough to oppose the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, before an exceptionally solemn expression filled their eyes. Bang! A terrifying fluctuation was suddenly emitted from another direction, while many pairs of eyes were focusing on the intense fight between Lindong and the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Everyone turned their heads and saw a monstrous yuan power permeating over that place. A large army below was emitting an extremely fearsome aura. Hovering above his devouring tiger army, Little Flame was holding the 9-cauldron divine hammer. His body had already transformed into a half-man half-tiger state. Green veins wiggled like dragons, emitting waves of extremely frightening energy ripples. There was a ferocious aura continuously surging out from the tiger-devouring army. Finally, they entered Little Flame's body. With the gathering of this ferocious aura, Little Flame's skin faintly turned slightly red. At this moment, he had actually gathered the strength of the entire tiger-devouring army. He is actually able to temporarily absorb the strength of this army. The brow of the Golden Ape Demon Commander twitched upon seeing this scene. He was a little shocked. After all, it was possible for him to detect that the aura of the tiger-devouring army seemed to have merged with Little Flame. Raw? Little Flame's skin turned increasingly blood-red. In the next moment, he suddenly roared towards the sky while metallic like fur grew from under his skin. The veins on his arm also turned blood-red. Boom! Little Flame stomped his foot after his tiger roar sounded. His body turned into a blood-red ray of light and shot forward. The 9-cauldron divine hammer was as heavy as a mountain as it furiously smashed against the Golden Ape Demon Commander. Even the air exploded as the hammer fell. The Golden Ape Demon Commander's expression did not change. Wielding the black metal rod in his hand, he met the attack head-on. A hammer and rod clashed and sparks flew. That frightening energy ripple caused even the space itself to shake until it was distorted. Little Flame roared furiously after his attack was blocked. He swung his hammer wildly, filling the sky with its shadows. Then, they smashed towards the Golden Ape Demon Commander continuously. However, the latter did not give in either. He unleashed the strength of the Samsara stage. Two powerful forces collided, shaking the world with their might. The third battleground was the least intense compared to the other two. The sky-devouring corpse continuously charged towards the Ghost Condor Demon Commander. However, it was pushed back by the latter each time. The surprising thing was that despite suffering powerful attacks from the Ghost Condor Demon Commander, the sky-devouring corpse remained intact. Its endurance even surprised the Ghost Condor Demon Commander. Fortunately, the offensive abilities of this sky-devouring corpse had yet to reach the level of a Samsara stage expert. Hence, it was difficult for it to pose a threat towards the Ghost Condor Demon Commander. The fight between the two could only be said to be an entanglement. Despite this being the case, it was still very shocking. After all, a puppet that could tie down a Samsara stage expert was no ordinary item. Everyone stared at the three shocking battles in the sky. They gradually began to realize why Lindong actually dared to utter those words to the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander previously. After all, his Deep Lightning Mountain actually possessed such terrifying strength. If it was not because of the fact that three great demon commanders had attacked together, just the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander alone might not be able to defeat the Deep Lightning Mountain. Nonetheless, everyone also knew that it was only a matter of time before the Deep Lightning Mountain was defeated despite its intense retaliation. Three Samsara stage powerful individuals could not be beaten by simply using such tricks. The space in an extremely distant place showed signs of distortion when the Divine Item Mountain range had entered into an extremely intense fight. After which, a spatial swirl was formed. Four figures rushed out from within. An extremely powerful pressure covered the place after the four figures appeared. It caused the surrounding Yuan power to become a little chaotic. All their auras had actually reached the Samsara stage. For Samsara stage experts, this lineup could easily turn the entire Beast War region upside down. Is there any news? There was a black-clothed man in front of three figures. His face was covered by a black robe while his eyes looked into the distance. Suddenly, he asked, Jiao, the person you are looking for should have headed to the Divine Item Mountain range. Moreover, based on the information that we received, it seems like they have ran into some problems. A large-built middle-aged man smilingly said. Problems? The black-clothed man's body shook slightly. A moment later, the other three could detect a ferocity rising from him. They have offended the Blood Dragon Hall in the Beast War region. That Heaven Dragon Demon Commander seems to be at the Samsara stage. Based on the information that I have received previously, It seems like even the other two great demon commanders have also become enemies with them. Ha ha, these two friends of yours are really a little hot-blooded. Offending three great demon commanders at the same time, the other middle-aged man laughed upon hearing this. Three great demon commanders. The black-cloaked young man lifted his head upon seeing this, revealing his smooth and handsome outline of his chin. There was a harsh ridicule appearing on the corner of his mouth. Soon after, he extended his long and fair hand and removed the black hood above his head. Long dark purple hair fell from it before an extremely handsome, devil-like face was exposed under the sunlight. He lifted his head and looked towards the direction of the divine item mountain range. There was a faint purple luster in his eyes, which had an endless cold glint and brutalness surging out like floodwater. A domineering and proud cold voice spread in the air. If they dare to touch Grandpa Martin's brothers, I will tear their skin off while they are still alive. The five-color torrent was like a river that cut across the sky. It was accompanied by a matchless force as it ruthlessly collided with the dragon fist that was flying towards it, causing an astonishing shock wave to spread like a tsunami. During this head-on clash, divine objects were destroyed by the frightening power from time to time. However, a larger number of divine objects quickly replaced them. The mysterious divine palace possessed a relatively terrifying number of divine objects. Destroying all of them was clearly beyond the ability of a samsara stage expert. Activating the mysterious divine palace requires an extremely vast amount of yuan power. Let me see just how long an initial profound death stage brat like you can endure. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander forced back the five-color torrent with a punch as his cold cry resounded across the sky. The mysterious divine palace was indeed powerful, and even the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had no choice but to admit it. The power contained within the torrent made from the gathering of countless divine objects was something that even a samsara stage expert could not ignore. However, the yuan power consumption was relatively frightening. It was already extremely difficult for Lindong to endure until now with his initial profound death stage strength, hence, it was a little unrealistic for him to persevere for too long. This point was something that the many experts observing the battleground clearly understood. Hence, even though Lindong had revealed an ultimate ancient divine object like the mysterious divine palace right from the start, there was still no one who believed that he could truly beat the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. The gap between the profound death stage and the samsara stage was not something that one could easily make up for by relying on a divine object. The fact that Lindong could hold out against the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander for such a long time already caused countless people to feel shocked. In that case, I will need to finish this as soon as possible. Lindong laughed coldly. He was naturally aware of his weakness. If it was not because he possessed great attainments in both yuan power and mental energy as well as the devouring ancestral symbol which was continuously devouring natural yuan power to replenish his strength, he would not have been able to last for such a long time. Hence, he must end the fight as soon as possible against opponents whose strength far surpassed his own. His eyes suddenly turned ice-cold after his words sounded. The seals formed by his hands altered and the speed of the five-color torrent soared. It tore through the sky, dodged the overbearing punch of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander and got behind him. The torrent whizzed and wrapped around the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander like a huge python. Are you planning on trapping me with this? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander mocked. Black-white life-death power spluttered from his body. The terrifying ripples caused even space itself to be distorted, while cracking sounds could be heard from the five-color torrent. Lindong's eyes were cold and indifferent as he watched the imposing Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. A ruthlessness that could not be detected flashed across his black eyes as he suddenly clenched his hand. Explode! A low voice was emitted from Lindong's mouth as the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's pupils abruptly shrunk. He could feel the five-color torrent entwined around him suddenly begin to emit extremely chaotic fluctuations while the surface of the divine object started to show signs of bursting apart. This fellow actually plans to have these divine objects self-destruct. The expression of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander changed. He did not expect that Lindong would be so decisive. After all, these divine objects were extraordinary. If so many of them self-destructed together, it would truly be too great of a loss. This thought flashed across the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's heart like lightning. However, he was after all an overlord of a region. Although Lindong's skills had caused him to be momentarily distracted, he quickly recovered. His body suddenly swelled as densely packed scales grew on the surface of his skin. Bang! However, the 5-color torrent completely exploded while the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander hurriedly activated his defenses. A 5-color pillar shot towards the clouds, followed by an earth-shaking loud sound, scattering the clouds in the sky. Everyone was dazed as they looked at the 5-color light pillar while their scalps turned numb. It was likely that they had felt the terrifying destructive force from the explosion. A shock wave with such power would likely be able to kill even a perfect profound death stage expert. This brat is really ruthless. Some experts were quietly speechless. They naturally understood that Lindong had actually made the many divine objects self-destruct earlier. This was really bold. However, even if this is the case, it will still be difficult to defeat the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. All eyes looked over as the tremendous 5-color light pillar gradually faded. A figure surfaced from within it. The body of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was covered by thick blood-red scales. Deep cracks were present on these scales. Evidently, this damage had been done by Lindong's ferocious attack from earlier. What an unlikable fellow. The light finally disappeared while the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander lowered his head and looked at the sorry state of his body as monstrous murderous desire surged within his eyes. Although his injuries were not terrible, it was enough to infuriate him. A little profound death stage brat had actually caused him to fall into such a miserable state. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander deeply inhaled a breath of air before he lifted his head. Those dark and malicious eyes looked at the far-away Lindong. Bloodlight gathered at his back as 6 blood wings slowly unfurled. It was possible to see the rotating life-death chi on the blood wings. With the appearance of the blood wings, the ripples around the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander grew even more terrifying. In the next moment, the blood wings on his back suddenly flapped. All everyone could hear was the sound of air breaking. Lindong's pupils shrunk. The dragon wings on his back instantly extended while his body moved and an afterimage appeared. Bang! A blood-red dragon fist, which was covered in scales, strangely broke out from space itself. The fist shattered the afterimage into nothingness. Blood-red light flashed again as another blood-red dragon fist penetrated through the space in front of the rapidly withdrawing Lindong. Lindong's arms were crossed as green dragon scales rapidly wrapped around them. Boom! The blood-red dragon fist smashed onto Lindong's arms as frightening power spluttered out. Lindong's body flew backwards, directly shattering a mountain behind him. Lindong stabilized his body. His complexion was rather pale and there was even a trace of blood had appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was obviously that the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had completely unleashed his full power. It was indeed extremely troublesome for Lindong to face an expert of this level. Lindong wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth as he glanced at the battleground of Little Flame and the Golden Ape Demon Commander. Little Flame was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. His offense and defense were controlled by the Golden Ape Demon Commander. The overwhelming difference in power was gradually revealing itself with the flow of time. Little fellow, your body is quite tough. However, I wonder just how many times you can endure. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander laughed coldly. The murderous intent in his eyes was so dense that it seemed to have substance. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's voice faded as his body once again strangely disappeared. Clearly, he did not intend to give Lindong any time to recuperate. Lindong's eyes turned grave when he saw this. His eyes flickered a little. This time, his body did not show any intentions of dodging. This was because he was slower than the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander that had brought out his blood wings. Bang! The space behind Lindong suddenly ruptured as red light shot out. The evil laughter of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was transmitted into his ear. A dragon fist wrapped in life-death chi ruthlessly smashed towards the fatal spot on Lindong's back while accompanied by a ripple that was almost able to tear apart the sky. Evidently, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander planned to deal the fatal blow. The land around Lindong collapsed due to the punch from the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Lindong immediately turned around. However, the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was stunned to find that there was little panic and despair on Lindong's young face. Instead, a craziness was gathering within those black eyes. Die? The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander let out a stern cry as the power of his fist rose once again. If this punch connected, Lindong would definitely die regardless of how powerful his physical body was. Lindong's black eyes frantically flickered. In the next instant, his hand whirled and the mysterious divine palace appeared. 5-color light exploded and directly clashed with the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's punch. 2 fingers within his sleeve suddenly curled when the mysterious divine palace appeared. Black light and a lightning glow condensed at his fingertips and 2 ancient symbols seemed to float within the lights. Bang! The mysterious divine palace and the fist of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander ruthlessly clashed. There was no noise in that moment. Everyone could only see that the land around them collapsed at a shocking speed and 100,000 feet crack spread under their feet like the deep abyss. Crack! Fresh blood suddenly poured from Lindong's arm while the sound of bone cracking was heard. His body was also sent flying by that extremely formidable force. However, Lindong's other hand suddenly extended from his sleeve just as his body was about to be sent flying. An inconspicuous black lightning beam suddenly shot out from between his fingers. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's eyes widened when the ray of black lightning shot out as an indescribable feeling of danger rose within his heart. The Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was not an ordinary expert. Even at this moment, he was still able to grasp that momentary opening. His originally strong and sturdy body shrunk somewhat. As a result, that black lightning, which was aimed at the fatal spot on his heart, shifted slightly and shot his shoulder. The hard blood-red scales did not create the slightest obstruction as the black lightning penetrated the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander's shoulder. Hot blood spluttered out and the body of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was finally sent flying. Finally, he smashed into a mountain wall, causing the entire mountain wall to be shattered into dust. Bang! Lindong's body also landed on the ground. His arm was covered in blood, giving him a somewhat miserable appearance. However, no one dared to mock him at this moment. Countless powerful individuals were startled as they looked at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander in the distance who was holding his shoulder while half of his body was drenched in blood. All of them, their scalps turned numb at that instant. No one could have imagined that Lindong had not only managed to survive the fatal blow of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, but had even risked his life to deliver an attack that ended up injuring the latter. It's a pity. Lindong looked at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, whose face still contained a trace of lingering fear, as he quietly shook his head. He ought to have been able to severely injure the latter with the previous opportunity. Who could have expected that this fellow would have such quick reflexes? He was indeed worthy of being a Samsara stage expert. Given the cautious character of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander, it would be very hard to find a second chance. Bang! Lindong quietly sighed in his heart. A deep muffled sound appeared in the distance as a miserable figure landed on the ground. He barely managed to stabilize himself after taking over a dozen steps on the ground. Big brother. Little Flame wiped the blood at the corner of his mouth and looked at the Lindong's bloody arm with some worry. However, his present condition was also rather terrible. Many bloody wounds covered his body, evidence of the relatively intense bloody battle he had experienced earlier. I'm fine. Lindong waved his hand. His face was rather pale, but the ferocious and ruthless attack of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander earlier had been blocked by the mysterious Divine Palace. That fellow is very strong. My current self cannot beat him. Little Flame spoke in an ashamed voice. He had used all of his strength to fight the Golden Ape Demon Commander earlier. However, the latter was no ordinary individual. The huge gap between the profound death stage and the Samsara stage was something that Little Flame could not make up for. You are already extremely strong to have forced a Samsara stage expert to use his full power with just your strength alone. Lindong smiled. They had already improved greatly compared to back then. What should we do now? Little Flame asked. Lindong glanced at the sky-devouring corpse, which was still holding back the Ghost Condor Demon Commander. Although it had succeeded in its task, the sky-devouring corpse was clearly unable to defeat the latter. It is a little troublesome. Perhaps we will need to leave. Lindong frowned slightly. He had ultimately underestimated the strength of 3 samsara stage experts. If the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was alone, he would definitely make sure the latter would end up worse off from trying to kill him in a single strike. Unfortunately, 3 samsara stage experts had exceeded his expectations. They will not be able to stop us if I wish to escape with you. However, we will have to temporarily abandon Deep Lightning Mountain. Lindong spoke in a soft voice. He felt somewhat regretful. Deep Lightning Mountain was quite a good faction. If properly groomed, it could even become a great support to them when they return to the Eastern Xian region in future. However, in the face of the current situation, they would likely no longer be able to retain this faction. As long as Big Brother is fine, it doesn't matter if we have to abandon Deep Lightning Mountain. Little Flame was unconcerned. In his eyes, Deep Lightning Mountain was merely a tool. Lindong could do as he pleased and Little Flame would not have the slightest objection. General Yang, you are pretty good. You are the first person to have pushed me to such an extent with only the strength of the perfect profound death stage. No wonder you were able to finish off that Xu Song. You are much stronger than him. The Golden Ape Demon Commander carried a black metal rod. The golden armor on his body had some deep hammer dents. Clearly, Little Flame's earlier attacks had given him quite a lot of trouble. Therefore, the eyes which the Golden Ape Demon Commander used to look at Little Flame were somewhat grave. He was aware that if Little Flame was a little stronger, even if it was only the half step to Samsara stage, it would be difficult for them to determine a victor in their fight today. Little Flame grasped the 9 Cauldron Divine Hammer in his hand. His eyes were fierce as he stared at the Golden Ape Demon Commander. A large part of his huge body was protecting Lindong behind him. A miserable figure flew over from afar. The face of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander was currently also relatively twisted. His eyes were so ferocious that it caused one to shiver. Never did he imagine that he would be forced into such a miserable state by Lindong, and had even narrowly avoided being seriously injured. To him, this was undoubtedly a disgrace. This was especially the case since it had occurred in front of so many people. The Golden Ape Demon Commander's eyelids involuntarily twitched as he glanced at the injuries of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. Their strengths were equal and even he would not have an easy time dealing such injuries to the latter. Unexpectedly, these 2 fellows before them were really extraordinary. Lindong's eyes were indifferent as he looked at the ferocious face of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. A light array gathered in his palm. It was indeed difficult for them to defeat their opponents today. However, the 3 great demon commanders would not be able to stop him if he wished to escape. Lindong, if I do not tear you into tens of thousands of pieces today, how can I have the face to be the chief of the Blood Dragon Hall? The furious roar of the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander thundered as monstrous life-death chi gathered behind him and he transformed into an incomparably huge 6-winged flying dragon. His aura was earth-shaking. Everyone could tell that this Heaven Dragon Demon Commander had become completely mad. Lindong's eyes were cold as he stared at the Heaven Dragon Demon Commander. He put his hand on Little Flame's shoulder, prepared to leave at any time. Let's go. However, Lindong's pupils shrunk just as a low cry was emitted from his mouth. In the next moment, a familiar voice, which caused even someone like Lindong's heartbeat increase, suddenly resounded over the mountain range. Big mongrel bird, you actually still believe you can continue being the chief of a faction after hurting the brothers of Grandpa Martin? Are you dreaming? This video will end here.